Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. Pulling strings of meaning, and are the ultimate noun and verb the same? Something interesting arose to me, a perception, where I was like, we have nouns and verbs in this life, and there is an interconnected relationship. I shouldn't say interconnected, but a codependent relationship between a noun and a verb. And what that means is, in some sense, for a verb, the subject is a noun. For a noun, the subject is a verb. It's as if a verb is a film and a noun is a photo. Okay, everyone, there was an issue with the audio output. I don't know if people heard what I said earlier, but I'm going to assume they did. I was just simply saying that when we look at this life, we perceive it in the sense of verbs and nouns. When we look at the relationship of a noun and a verb, in some sense, when an object moves, it becomes a subject. When a subject stops moving, it becomes an object. So the end of the verb is the noun, and the end of the noun is the verb. And so we as human beings are telling ourselves this story that we are nouns, but the universe is a verb, and how do nouns live inside a verb, really? Even the concept of living is really a verb. That means everything is actually a verb here. A movement, an event taking place, but it's just fragments of the event we consider nouns, It's as if it is true, we are an object. That means when it comes to reductive physicalism, we have no choice. We are an object. That means it's not even something of belief or disbelief. It's just a physical existence is here and it is stable. But when we wonder about subjective experience of physical existence, then we come to, a sort of substance dualism, which I often refer to in these talks. That it's as if the mind is not, Rene Descartes called it a sort of substance dualism, the mind-body problem, but for me, I wouldn't say that it is a substance. The mind is another room. It is a world that appears to be inside a world, but actually the outer realms can also appear to be inside the inner realms. That means a person can look at the world and be like, what is this? And they could say in some sense it is mind. It is just pure mind manifestation, a sort of mind-forged realism. So reality can be constituted as a mysterious subjective verb, or in some sense as a very non-mysterious known objective noun. And we have started from the nouns. And what I mean by that, life is a giant is being taught as a giant noun. And pretty much any act of any human being that acts like they understand a system, they only understand the most up-to-date noun extraction from a moving verb, right? Now, to honor the title, when I have written, are the ultimate noun and verb the same, I was thinking about the complexity of the idea of the verb and noun. That means if we were to think, what is the most ultimate thing in reality? Objective focus, and it would be trying to find the ultimate noun. And that means it's pretty much two questions. First we're asking what is the ultimate noun, then we're asking what is the ultimate verb, then we're asking the question, is there a possibility that the ultimate noun and verb are the same? What that means is the most ultimate thing that can happen for a subject and the most ultimate thing that can happen for an object are the same. Because subjects are always in comparison. That means any person who looks at their identity, whoever you are now, it is in contrast to a past, correct? What that means is the brain has archived images of previous moments where life was real. And so that reality echoes on. You know what the feeling is? There's this feeling I have had often, and I don't know how to tell you. This is one of the most, I would say, divine feelings I've had. And this feeling is really in any moment, even right now as I'm giving this talk, whoever's listening, just for a moment consider that you, in this moment, are being the memory of your future self. That means right now in the present moment, we look at our past and the past is alive to our present, right? But if we were to consider that our present will become the past, so it means right now, if there was a future self, we are being its memory. That would be the implication. And really how we live is suggesting the type of memory we leave behind for our future self. Let's say you're a person who you look at your past and you chose to live like an animal. You were vicious, violent, and unloving. Let's say you lived a life like that, right? And then you're going to go into a future self and wonder why, in some sense, their life is unloving. And I'm telling you, the echoes of other moments of space-time manifestation are found in the psyche. The psyche is like this, what it is? It's as if the cosmos appears as a vacuum, and a vacuum can be perceived as an empty room, and so it's as if anything we shout in an empty room, the echo goes as far as it hits the final wall. That means it's like the signals we send in outer space. These signals have to do in some sense with what they reflect off of. Do you know? There's many moments in this life where reality just shifts in percentage between the known and the unknown. I think ultimately this is the task of knowledge. If the moment was 100% known, let's say we 100% knew what was going on, there would be no need for a verb anymore, right? That means the path of knowledge is seeking the ultimate noun. But the path of karma, the path of work, the path of not per se looking for information to be the next truth, in some sense, truly moving through the information. Karma yoga is very actual. It is happening, and what it means is everything we do is trying to reach for the future. It's very poetic. It's as if existence it has come alive to the human function, to the human position, and the human position is looking at the totality of this existence and being like, what do I do? The hilarious idea is that if right now the person was everything, there would be nothing to do. So the moment we attain singular consciousness, there is no verb anymore. It's like the totality is just one complete noun. It's kind of like the religious mentality where the person's like, are you afraid of going to heaven and hell? And the religious person's like, how can I be afraid? The soul is God. That means if man is afraid, God is afraid. Ralph Waldo Emerson, a very profound, in my view, he was a very profound mystic and poet, and he was the founder of American Transcendentalism, this movement. Many, I would say, American audiences know about spirituality of other countries, but they do not know the spirituality of their own country beyond just ceremonial shadows. You see, this world of ours is like a painting, and it's being painted, and it's being painted by a coagulation of forces. That means I'm here giving a talk, and there is so many other people giving a talk online on YouTube, right? And so at the same time, we look at this world, and it's like as one part of it happens, all the other parts are happening as well, and they're all going towards their own conclusions. And what it is it's as if the species is endlessly simulating itself until it collectively understands itself. I would say the species is getting ready to become a collective being. It's like there was that scene, I remember I was so young. I remember I was young and it was like in a VCR. I was seeing like this Power Rangers movie where all the Power Rangers were like all on their own, but suddenly they all connected and became like a badass Power Ranger. And it was like my youthful mind at the age of, 6 or something was like, oh my God, but really, that's what we are waiting for in civilization. Systems to seek their perfection. Not perfection, but to try to be as up-to-date as possible and then join the performance towards the better. If I was to attempt the question, what is the ultimate verb? That means, let's say, suddenly, the ultimate microphone was thrown into my hand and I had a moment to just answer these 3 questions. What is the ultimate verb? What is the ultimate noun? And are they the same? I would say the ultimate verb is infinity. I would say the ultimate noun is everything, the universe. That means infinity included. That means nouns, in some sense, from certain states of mind, they are the source of suffering. From certain states of mind, they are the resolution to activity. It's very poetic. You know what it is? It's as if there is 2 types of forces functioning in this world of ours. One is the force of doing, where it brings forth doers, and what that means is like in a specified focused activity. And then the other is in regards to being. That means if we say we are a human being, that means something is being and we have become conscious of the human shape. So I would say the ultimate verb is an endless updating system as truth. And when it comes to the ultimate noun is the whole thing. So that means once the humanity aims for the ultimate verb, we, in the midst of the verb, in our attempt to build an advanced civilization, for example, we're going to suddenly realize in the middle of it we are advanced, The eyes of the mind go where the soul commands. The soul is very poetic for me. The soul is not the king, but it is the king of the inner realm. That means on some level we are gods hiding from gods, not realizing energy is one. So the ultimate verb and noun in my vision are the same, but the vision of it means it reaches beyond personality. So I have concluded that the ultimate destination of, check out what I'm saying. I'm saying the ultimate destination of intelligence is beyond the human form. That means we are an intelligence going through a phase of materialistic association until there is, greater breaches of clarity in the ignorance of, past social constructs. If I was to consider the mind, let's kind of like honor René Descartes and take this idea of mind-body dualism further. So in the sense of the outer realms, which is physical reductionism, and I would say in the inner realms, which is a sort of mind dualism, I would say that the body has to be inspired by verb. The body has to move or we die. And the mind, in some sense, if it doesn't have a destination, it dies. Simple as that. Not that it dies, it just ceases to exist. Either momentum has to be directed, or it's pretty much what I'm saying is either you move reality or reality moves you. And whenever reality moves you, if the person has not lifted if they have not taken off the hat of duality, they will suffer. I am telling you, duality makes the world, divides the world. It's as if the universal intelligence is one cake, and duality divides, cuts the cake in half. So what it is that the verb and noun not only because of their codependence, but just by the nature of there being one cake from the beginning, regardless of into how many pieces the cake is cut, it is one moment. So what that means is verbs, nouns, and I created this concept spelled with a W, verby nouns, regardless of what modality of realm interpretation, it is. There is one moment here, guys. That means I am, as much as I'm, talking about various angles. I mean, sometimes in the middle of these talks, the silliness of my context that I'm holding of the talk, it's kind of like a person talking about enlightenment, but realizing the light is instantly in our eyes. Or as a Japanese Zen master would incredibly say, by the name of Matsuo Basho, he has one of the most profound quotes written in the human language. He says, "The journey itself is my home." That means it's strange, but the moment in the inner realms there is an ultimate noun. For example, in the outer realms, I would say one of the ultimate noun. It's not the ultimate noun, but one of the ultimate nouns for humanity is this concept of the advanced civilization I keep talking about. So that would be a sort of as if in order to build the ultimate civilization, we have to enlist the help of verbs, and in order to inspire the verbs have to seek a noun, poetically. So what I mean is that these are different states. That means whenever you're in a state of dynamism, most likely the person is trying to find balance by going into a state of stability. Right? And if a person understands that physical existence is simultaneous with subjective experience and physical existence is simple, that means it's only human beings that complain. No other species complains. The atoms do not complain, electrons do not complain, energy doesn't complain. It is only the human being that is in a temporary condition that is trying to find a solution to it, honestly. Right? That means everything in this world is actually immortal. Everything. Right? But it is subjectively temporary. That means, believe it or not, existence has no identity. That means it's like a person looking at a rock and being like, is this rock a happy rock or a sad rock? The rock has no identity. It's pure being. So in some sense, in the middle of any verb of life, we suddenly come to that pure being. So they are the same. Ultimately, the ultimate noun and the verb are the same. They are one moment. Realizing that it has been walking in 2 dimensions. The child enters this world, and it is through movement and the reflections that is received through that movement. That means this concept of a noun and a verb is actually ridiculous how we're using it. Life is too alive and too multidimensional for that. And so not only does language need to evolve, not only do experience hunters need to unite, but we must in some sense start the greatest project to know what consciousness is. It's like a question that hasn't been answered yet. It's like the $1 million question. What are we before we measure? Sometimes I feel philosophy is the last human intellectual position. It's like the last stance of humanity, It's like Walrose in Shingeki, was it Walrose or Walsina in Shingeki no Kyojin? It is in some sense the closest to the truth. So what it is life is not, let's entertain simulation theory, and let's say that this life that we're living in, it is endless simulations, or I shouldn't say endless, but let's say reality had 7 illusions. The ancient yogis were like, life is a dream. That means it's all one big illusion. But imagine if it was 7 big illusions. That means we had to, in some sense, reverse engineer 7 lifetimes of different conscious positioning. And when I say lifetimes, guys, the past is imagination. That means memory and imagination are one of those 2 words that are like of the same coin, same sides of the coin. A person can in any moment be like, okay, it's honestly the context of time. When the image is familiar, it is acknowledged as a memory. When the image is unfamiliar, it is acknowledged as a mystery. When the image is the familiar interacting like a chemical with the unfamiliar, and then there is like a new angle. It's all knowledge's effort to go beyond the unknown. In the future, there's so much work to do in the outer realms that eventually we will have yogis, silently protesting, the effort towards the advanced civilization. Why? Because some people feel that truth has nothing to do, and it's not that they are wrong, but it's just that nothing never explains anything. That means in all philosophy, any philosopher who goes towards nothing, pure nothing, and not unlike Buddhism, I would say more in the sense of the analytical philosopher. The analytical philosopher is actually a scientist wearing the jacket of a philosopher. Because in objective materialism, there is no greater truth. That means for a moment I was like, oh my God, people in certain parts of the East in the world, they are worshiping God, right? Their attention is 24/7 on this supreme truth beyond reality that is moving it as an intelligent personality. And then I was like, wait a minute, what about the rest of the world? Does the rest of the world believe in God? And what we come to find is that if the word belief never existed, there is no such thing as a person even having a philosophy. All that is eyes connecting to reality. That is it. Right? There is so much we don't know that whatever theory, it's literally like, to infinity, epistemology is a joke. We are having theories on knowledge in a mystery. It's like we're treating a question mark like an exclamation point. Or we should be treating reality like a question mark, but we're actually treating it like an exclamation point. Vision. Vision is the miracle in the room. Vision is God moving as a man. And what my recognition is that there is no worship, there is no verbs, there is just attention on nouns. And as this attention stays on the noun eventually animates with force. And without trust, reality would not happen. So, wandering beyond nouns and verbs, any human being who does this, you are pulling the strings of how reality's meaning is designed as a narrative. Albert Einstein had such a great definition of genius. His definition of genius was connecting two worlds that have nothing to do with one another, And so we are left in, as a species, making the genius move piloting beyond verbs and nouns. And what that means is we cannot hold people in ideology, and we should realize direct experience holds language. This shift in the consciousness of the person, I will tell you, your karma will change. I'm not a person to tell you, like, give you promises. I'm a person that will tell you, like, there's probabilities. And based on how far in this moment I see the probabilities, the reality comes. If a human being gets a glimpse beyond the linguistic simulation and moves towards the language threshold, and in the silence they observe the experiencer, that experiencer is the fuel provider of the meaning of the verb and the noun. That means every time I'm a person to myself, it's like my body is using energy to remember itself. It's like, who knew? Remembering things takes energy. Sometimes fear, I would say there's two types of fear. I would say there is a humanized fear where the human outcome makes us afraid of reality. And then there is a dehumanized fear where it's something beyond human. And the fear of that which is beyond human is something that we should see, we should in some sense never have, in the sense of realizing that yes, it is true, every person has a name and a form and they're an individual in society, but at the same time we are like, imagine if a needle with a string on it was a camera. The tip of the needle was a camera, and so whatever this needle weaved in the space-time continuum, it had a sort of tunnel vision of. Honestly, what it is, it's like past life regression is kind of like tunneling, trying to somehow, through some methodology, tunnel back into your memory, into your memory's origin. And I will tell you, every human being enters this world with a nature. Now, this concept is so supreme because there's this idea of like, yeah, everything's natural, we're natural beings, but then there's this view of your true nature. That means whatever systematic approach you've had to life, you're like, wait a minute, there is something true here, and it is the ultimate truth of nature, found within the natural human being. It's as if the human being is gifted not only with infinity and the void, not only with the singular and the dual, but with the ability to not become God, but find God's novelty. What that means is the story of the world is a force in motion. The language will never suffice as a complete technology to explain direct experience, and if the species cannot accept this, we will just hide behind language and not realize that there is an apocalypse coming for all linguists. And what I mean by this is it's the recognition and the global realization that all meaning is being projected on a rock in emptiness. So really, all the meaning of civilization in an instant can change. If theoretically all human beings in one moment could just think of one thought, that would, or not one thought, or their attention could be on one focal point, one point. We can in one instant change our attitude to life. That's the gift of the mind. The mind lets us be different types of, self-response to the stimulus of the outer. It's what it is it's like we're creatures that have opened our eyes in an infinitely changing phenomena. Now, in this infinitely changing phenomena, our mind gives us an ability to control. So because we have free will, we have to do something with it, and when we wonder what it is that we can do with our free will, we come to the being-doing dichotomy, right? Where what should I be, or what should I do? I would say most human beings are thinking through these two channels of perception. It's like channel 1, channel 2. One has a space of change, the other doesn't, because it is already what its design and definition is. And something to say, something to comment on in regards to the wallpaper of this episode. I don't know who the artist is. I find these wallpapers in like this random website, but this picture was so fascinating because if you really look at it, this warrior is in a battlefield he not only has to have his attention on his balance on the horse, he not only has to know what is going on in the horse's psychology, he not only has to consider his ability to jump from the horse and fight, and he has to, in some sense, hold his weapons. Do you know what I mean? So what is going on is like this soldier in this picture is about to get off the horse and fight. You know, it's as if the brakes have been pulled and the horse is lifted into the air. You know, and it's as if like this soldier in this wallpaper is intentionally putting his weight on the back, so he just slips off the horse, you know. An attention that is multi-pointed, you know, multifaceted, multidimensional. You know, the best, you know, one of the best images to explain multidimensionality is a dot with a bunch of lines going through it. You know, and that's kind of like our moment of being. Every moment, wherever we are, not only the brain needs to scan the outer realms, but after you're finished scanning the outer realms, you scan the inner realms, right? And those who are conscious of this, in whatever environment they go, they do this, you know, based on your intelligence. You either do this instantaneously or you miss out on the signals that life provides, you know. I think about the verb. Let's say we were trying to answer this question, what is the purpose of life? And we were trying to think, okay, so as a verb, how would we answer that? As a noun, how would we answer that? As a noun, the purpose of life is how our knowledge is being a small part of the unknown. That's the purpose of life. That means it's like till the end of time, the question mark will be in the sky. And upon the realization, like we haven't had that day, like there should in the future be a day where all nations, all leaders, all positions of power on the planet were like, okay, this is the day where the species decided to entertain multidimensional tolerance. Everything becomes multidimensional, meaning that there is more to everything. That means no human being on this planet could have known another human being, because what every person is like the tip of the iceberg of who they are, you know. You know, warfare is an incredible concept. I think about it often. Because in my inner realms, I have gone all out. In the outer realms, I'm a very simple, minimalistic person. In my inner realms, you know, especially when emotions come, I have expressed it in my inner realms so often that in some sense, in my inner realms, I can visualize battlefields out of emotion. You know, just how a certain moment, everything, when you realize everything, like there's a quote ascribed to Da Vinci. He says, to develop a complete mind, study the science of art, study the art of science, learn to see, realize how everything connects to everything else. There's some kind of quote like this ascribed to Da Vinci. If you look at the quote is symmetrically satisfying meaning. You know, the science of art and the art of science is like from the verb to noun and the noun to verb approach. By learning to see, he means realize where you are, you know. where you are not just to yourself in your own mind, but where are you in the outer realms. And if you really don't know as a human being, honor the contentment of that. Because I'm telling you, personally as a human being, sometimes I don't know what to do with reality. All I can do is just watch it as a canvas of intelligent occurrence. It's as if sometimes I'm like, eyes, what are you looking at? And then the world I see, it not only reflects the emotions that have come to peek through, to perceive through the biological eyes. It's as if we think we're just looking outward. We don't realize where meaning is coming from is the inward. Now, personally, I was thinking about what are important ideas to talk about usually in these talks, and then I thought, okay, let's say I gave enough talks about this whole mind-body dualism, and the species realized it has a mind and started to live its mind's life, and let's say everybody was doing that. What next? How would the next stages of a sort of collective advancement look like? That means, how would the journey to the ultimate noun and verb and their simultaneity be attained? How would that journey look like realistically? That means, imagine somebody was realistically, man, how would 1,000 years look like? And we were realistically, first answer, I don't know, second answer. Realistically, if everybody became an advanced communicator, we would begin experiencing generations of incredible inner realm communication. What the inner realm, inner realm networking. So what I mean by that is there's worlds hidden behind our eyes. When there's a world of advanced communicators, these worlds are transferring and being passed and journeying through human beings at a fast speed. And so what it means is from the ignorance of an instinctual wild animal, we are going towards the civility of a collective modern intelligent action. What that means is it's no longer atoms, in the void. It is mankind's continuity in the void. That mankind part is a big deal. Some ancient systems of thought, they measure it. They say a person has a relationship with themselves, that's one level. The person has a relationship with, let's say, their counterpart, their partner, that's a second level, imagine your wife or whatnot. And so beyond that level, there is one having a relationship with the community, and beyond having a relationship with the community is to have a relationship with all mankind. Beyond having a relationship with all mankind is to have a relationship with all of the world at once. Right? So the sophistication of it goes very far, and if advanced communicators come, we're going to have high quality global human communication. And then this high quality global human communication will create atmospheres for the future generations, like the real soldiers, to unleash their genius. So what it is we're trying to build a civilization so inventors can accelerate in some sense, and we're trying to use knowledge as a sort of night's watch defending the realm from the extinction scenarios, By the way, questions of any sort are welcomed in the chat section. Usually I'm such a great speaker, nobody is left with questions, Anyways, in the future, there is no verb or noun. Multidimensionality becomes actualized in human psychology. No longer we can call it psychology. It would be the metapsychology era or the neo-psychology era. It would be an era where human beings, through trust, activate multidimensional being, because that's what trust is really. It is trusting another part of how the unknown works. So it's as if, like, before man can truly go into the unknown to discover what's going on in this world, man first has to have a relationship, a symbiosis with the unknown. And that means in this life there are things to look at, and there are also spaces where the sight is happening, right? You know, in my inner realms, I can't tell you, before giving these talks, sometimes I perceive an inner event. That means I get a vision. And what that vision is, I have had this one common vision where in my inner realms I just imagine civilization like a film, fast forwarding, but fast forwarding at a speed that is unfathomable. That means faster, 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 faster. Eventually you begin to see an advanced civilization has reached this threshold where it is advancing so quickly that it is actually nothing. Right? That would be the evolution of an advanced civilization. It goes beyond story format and language and energy, in some sense roars as a multidimensional clarity. Pulling the strings of meaning. This is something, I guess I'm a person born in 1991, so the context I was born in this life, from an early age in my life, I have noticed that life gives the person clues. What that means is truth. It doesn't reveal itself, but you sometimes notice its footprints, you know, in the space-time continuum. And to engage those moments means, like, really to enter the unknown, which means the self you were is gone, and the new self arrives. That means the space of your intelligence, you know, lives for the future. And of course, an advanced civilization would be in two manners, right? So I'm making this incredible argument where I'm saying in our inner realms there is endless advanced civilizations already built, because the imagination can instantly fathom. But in the outer realms, it is the game. It is what's left. It's as if the person visualized their hand, they visualized themselves grabbing a cup from the cupboard and drinking a glass of water. And so similarly, it's as if we, the species, envisioned the advanced civilization, and now all it has to do is go live out that framework. Because cruelty will get boring, evil will get bored, and only advancement will remain. I'm telling you. You know what it is? It's like in the middle of chaos and order fighting, it's as if somebody ran up to chaos and order, and it's like, hey, what are you doing? You know, there's only one way we can all go. This is why in some of my, of course I'm a person where I haven't mentioned in this talk, but there is a very deep dimension I have where there are moments I pray. And these prayers, they're not per se religiously in my movements. It's not a religious. My religion is really like nature is happening before language. Like, that's my ultimate philosophy. But when there has been moments where I can tell you, I have just shouted at the sky. Do you know, I know one thing, that whenever the concept of divinity or multidimensionality comes, there is a suggestion of a sort of godly position. And whenever the concept of God comes, to me, the only response is honesty. Do you know? And there's something about honesty which there is redemption in it. It's as if the person finally piloted to the signal of their true nature, to the level of their true nature. Everybody has a state where they maximize an incredible ability. attention and energy, they are two eyes that see the same. And the outer realms is an opportunity. Believe it or not, every moment is an opportunity of a lifetime. You know, every person on this planet can write poetry. Why? Because we all witness change. You know, the world has a soul, but its soul is still caught in the body and mind. And after an era where there is no longer body-mind, but there is just an acknowledgement of in front of our eyes and behind our eyes, that would be the classification of intelligence. And intelligence in front of our eyes, it has an objective component. Intelligence behind our eyes has a subjective component. And what that means is we have like Kung Fu, which is an objective martial art, but there is no counter to a subjective martial art, right? And so I came to solve this problem through the pilot analogy, right? That in some sense, whatever, it's just an archetype to control the forces of the moment with. You know, it's as if we are not like a wizard from fantasy novels that can raise his hand into the air and the whole water, you know, becomes like his hand. You know what I mean? Like the whole ocean rises like his hand. You know, we can't do that. But on some level, when I raise my hand in the air, I'm definitely levitating atoms. Like, you know, do you see? So it's as if the context can connect in many ways. You know, every time I talk about a victorious state of humanity, because of being open to a dualistic mind, I also consider the failure of humanity. And when you but when you look at a system and wonder about how can it fail, you see the possibilities for failure is more. There is more forces on this planet that in some sense can make the person fail. What I mean is that it's easier to break a plate, but it is very hard to make it, for example. So the level of destruction has like more access, you know, more instantaneous access than construction. But the thing is about when something is created, it is living its life event, you know. That means whatever happens in this life, the eye is piloted somewhere. And now the world stands among us. You know, sometimes when I think about the guy in mind, of course, there is the divine goddess sort of vision, right? You know, that in some sense, it is the supreme grace. You know, in certain cultures, the feminine, divine feminine was seen as the ultimatum of grace, you know. You know, it's kind of like if I was to archetypally give a female divine feminine and a divine masculine a sort of archetype. The divine feminine is the receiver, the divine masculine is the expressor, you know, is the expression. So ultimately, every person can receive and express, and based on how much their attention is there, their sort of ideals kind of, rise. In my inner realms, I have experienced apocalyptic moments. When I say apocalyptic moments, I mean moments where the image of self, by some movement of the inner narrative, has gone out of the picture. That means imagine living a life, and in that physical life, suddenly the idea of yourself disappears, and you're like, who am I in every moment, right? That question comes, right? That question is so superior than any verb or noun, and it is something so direct in experience that we are instantaneously being it, They called it self-realization, as if there is something here and your sense of self, which is the new emergence, is noticing it, right? This world is just an ancient power, The mind and body are like wings of a bird, honestly, and the soul is the eyes of the bird going beyond both. For tonight, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel. And for those who are new, a quote tunnel is literally, me reading a bunch of quotes to see how the eyes of human beings back in the day were open to the world. And so the theme for tonight is truth. I just want to see, personally, how reality is engaging itself. Arthur Conan Doyle. Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. Arthur Schopenhauer. All truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. We live in a fantasy world, a world of illusion. The great task in life is to find reality. James A. Garfield. The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. Galileo Galilei. All truths are easy to understand once they are discovered. The point is to discover them. Elvis Presley. The truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away. It's deep. Oscar Wilde says man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. And this is the thing about masks, guys. That means for some reason I think people may hate masks, but with this whole mask era coming forth into human civilization and society, it's for the first time an opportunity. You know what it is? It's like in internet, like on the internet, like on platforms such as YouTube and other social media, the person can create a username and they are hidden by that username. In today's society with the mask, it's like the same thing as externalized, right? Where the mask is in some sense hiding who the person is. Now, let's say the mask is hiding the personality of the person, and the person is going in society, that person will feel way more open in communicating truth because they are hidden. Just like the username hides them, the mask hides the personality. Peter Abelard says, by doubting we are led to question. By questioning we arrive at the truth. And just a quick reference, Descartes found the ultimate question where he was like, how can we question the questioner? Hence, cognito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Mark Twain says, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. This is very true. The Buddha says 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And the truth is the awareness to the present. That's it. That means if a person can be simple, like how their moment is being, then in some sense the inner realms cannot be turbulent. George Washington says truth will ultimately prevail where there is pains to bring it to light. René Descartes says if you would be a real seeker after the truth, it is necessary that at least once in your life you doubt as far as possible all things. Benjamin Disraeli says never apologize for showing feeling. When you do so, you apologize for the truth. Wow. Henry Rollins says sometimes the truth hurts and sometimes it feels real good. Thomas Jefferson says honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. Wow. Yeah. It's like, wisdom is trying to see how something is before or the imposition of the mental simulation of mind. Complexity is a state of infinite turbulence, so eventually only through stillness truth can be accessible. And honesty is like the stillness of the mind. Winston Churchill says a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. W. Clement Stone says truth will always be truth, regardless of lack of understanding, disbelief, or ignorance. George Brock says truth exists, only lies are invented. Sometimes I wonder how the concept of truth and emptiness can exist together, But that's something where the future advanced communicators and philosophers of all sorts will run towards tackling that question, Because we're a psychological animal, philosophers can have a very significant role in civilization because the psychological animal simulates meaning. And philosophy is not looking for an answer, but is trying to clearly see what is the most important question in the domain of consciousness to be proceeded, to be noticed. C.S. Lewis says, if you look for truth, you may find comfort in the end. If you look for comfort, you will not get either comfort or truth, only soft soap and wishful thinking to begin, and in the end, despair. Arthur Miller says, betrayal is the only truth that sticks. William Shakespeare says, no legacy is so rich as honesty. And you know what this means? This is just Mr. Within's comment also on all the artists on this planet currently. When Shakespeare says no legacy is so rich as honesty, he means because you're alive once, honesty means is you are staying true to the purity, to the first vision, the first inner intuitive vision, It's like the first impulse. Every person in any moment when you understand something, it's like this moment in the space-time continuum unlocked, And so what it is it's like what was knowledge back in the day has now become unlocking reality and wondering about its interconnectivity in various angles, Excuse me, I needed a quick intermission. Friedrich Nietzsche says there are no facts, only interpretations. This is an incredible quote. You know, you can say Friedrich Nietzsche was a philosopher that stayed true to emptiness at the end of his life. You know, human beings ultimately, they have to choose a side as they age in this reality. What that means is the more the time we have on this planet is less, the more urgent the expressive force of the intelligence becomes. David Icke says, infinite love is the only truth, everything else is illusion. Wallace Stevens says, perhaps the truth depends on a walk around the lake. Anne Lamott says, your problem is how you're going to spend this one odd and precious life you have been issued, whether you're going to spend it trying to look good and creating the illusion that you have power over people and circumstances, or whether you're going to taste it, enjoy it, and find out the truth about who you are. Mahatma Gandhi says, even if you are a minority of one, the truth is the truth. H.L. Mencken says, I believe that it is better to tell the truth than a lie. I believe it is better to be free than to be a slave. And I believe it is better to know than to be ignorant. That means lying is making you a slave to your past. That's just a general thing every human being should remember. Tertullian, the first reaction to truth is hatred. John Keats says, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. Hunter S. Thompson says, I have a theory that the truth is never told during the 9 to 5 hours. Wow. Adolf Loos says, be truthful. Nature only sides with truth. Jerome K. Jerome says it is always the best policy to speak the truth. Unless, of course, you are an exceptionally good liar, you know. Guys, lying is, I mean, we all know it is the art of deception. And deception means that you're hiding something, right? Now, to hide something to a society that cannot see, you know, in some sense is meaningless. So reality only requires honest generations of human expression, you know, honorable human beings piloting into the realm, you know, serving the realm, serving themselves simultaneously. And in some sense, you know, as the shouts of an advanced civilization are heard in the streets of cyberspace all around the world, you know, it becomes a sort of, I don't know, it's as if the world suddenly cares for how fast it goes towards the ultimate, you know, towards the best approach, best strategy. Technology can be seen as the greatest expression of nature. You can say machines fighting human beings in the future would be the same sort of chaos as, for example, you know, the early colonizers, you know, or I would say the early settlers into, for example, America fought the natives, right? So what it was like an unbelievable force, in some sense, not destroying like a sort of, you know, inferior position. So that karma echoes, right? But it doesn't echo in the sense, it echoes in the sense of, like, in reality there will always be forces beyond our control, and based on the person's level of compassion, that's where their choice becomes. I don't know how to say it, it's just that sometimes it feels heaven is in earth. It feels the mind is an eternal phenomenon, and it feels the body is a temporary phenomenon. And it's just a sort of film with depths of realism. J.K. Rowling says the truth, it is a beautiful and terrible thing and must therefore be treated with great caution. Yeah, because the thing about truth is that it could be a dehumanized position. So that's what I'm trying to do in these talks when I'm talking about multidimensionality, where I'm trying to keep the humanity alive, keep the focus on the human being being a healthy advancement, and then we have complex inner realm management. Mark Twain says truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities. Truth isn't. Another suggestion beyond the language threshold. Oscar Wilde says the truth is rarely pure and never simple. Aesop says every truth has two sides. It is as well to look at both before we commit ourselves to either. Confucius says the object of the superior man is truth. Yeah, because after you do everything in this life, you're like, yo, what do I do about truth though? So eventually the person has to tackle the biggest problem, the most important thing, right? A quote I shared in my YouTube channel's description. I'm gonna read it. Let me find it. There we go. The quote is from Sri Ramana Maharshi. He says, "You have to ask yourself the question, who am I? This investigation will lead in the end to the discovery of something within you which is behind the mind. Solve that great problem and you will solve all other problems exactly. So there is a puzzle to be solved here, which is our eyes being open in the first place. That is all that mysticism is, We are human beings, and nobody knows what the collective outcome at its greatest position looks like. I mean, there is no motivation, to be honest. We're all antennas picking up life differently. I find myself not, that's why I chose the name Mr.Within, to be honest. So I keep it at the humility that I am honestly a traveler in this world, and this podcast is just me sharing how far my eyes have opened. But there's 8 million different types of eyes, and sometimes I wonder if all eyes, like beams of ability, were pointed in the same direction, what would it look like? It's as if some people, they want something like from, let's say you're a child and you want Santa to bring you a gift, right? But in the future, hopefully children want Santa to bring an advanced civilization, It's like, what do you want for Christmas? A civilization that's so advanced that it has transcended the notions of, time of a temporary object creating its own story. There's more, but this more is beyond humanism. So regardless of whatever I say, how much are human beings willing to not only find a contentment with their physical life, not to find a contentment with their mental life, their inner life, but to find a contentment with the whole moment, and then after you have found all of this contentment, you just watch. And in that watching and in that silence, it's as if imagine a movie theater and imagine the cinema screen, but now imagine the cinema screen becoming a sphere and somehow the movie projection still being played on the screen. So it becomes this sphere where inside of it there's a film. And I feel that when we go beyond our moment's condition, we access an unconditional sphere of knowing, right? So it's as if, like, this may sound strange, but it's as if right now I'm giving this talk through a sphere, a sphere, as if imagine you could look inside, the universe and realize you were being it. And imagine after you had been it for some time, you had realized there is no concept of death, there is only the opportunities of life that live on in their own eternal memory. That's why in certain traditions they honor their ancestors. Why? Because that's the beginning of your genetical pattern. And when I give these talks, I'm like, what if one day 8 billion human beings actually hear this talk? Some people are like, Mr.Within, why do you repeat? And I'm like, because what if, anybody hears just these talks on their own? I have to somehow weave, in every episode a sort of contextual connection to what I've said before in other talks. And I hope that the advanced civilization that we attain as a species, it will take care of every human being's blind spots. What that means is the hidden lives of the genius behind the eyes is not ignored. So let me tell you the difference between an advanced civilization. An advanced civilization will not wait for the talented to come towards it. An advanced civilization will go scout for the talent. Right? Because the whole idea is that we are all biological information processors, and when we become honest, we access raw data, raw information. Right? It's like original information. That means if a salesman was trying to sell you information, he'd be like, yo man, this information is so original, even God wonders about it. But really what I'm trying to say is that when we look at the original, we are looking at really the first relationship with the ultimate. Beyond information, the world is a movement. We need a level of ignorance, just like, the meals need salt and pepper. Every moment, in order to be a person, we have to keep more unknown variables. Because if we think we are everything, there is no need for individual responsibility. And this is a sort of mistake, a sort of trap. I call this the enlightenment trap, where the person behind their eyes, they feel enlightened, but they don't realize there is no such thing as enlightenment for a universal intelligence. It is only man who needs to hide in words until, like a caterpillar emerging from the cocoon, like a butterfly. Like, that's how we get out of the linguistic simulation. Not that you ignore it, but whatever language has become a constitution of your ideal view, you observe it as if, imagine your mind was a backpack, and in this backpack was all your memories, and you have one night in your stillness meditation, and after pure stillness, you're like, all right, let me see how these memories have been a geometrical influence in the meaning of who I am today. And when you see, really, our emotions kind of activate different memories. So you can say when a person is sad, their identity is based on the memories that sadness had been connected to before. So what I mean is, imagine a child in a school, a young child gets pushed, gets bullied for a nanosecond and gets pushed. And so that child grows up never being able to have pushed back, and when somebody accidentally, bumps into them, that person feels like pushing them away. Why? Because anytime that emotion arrives again out of coincidence, the past's memory runs to live in that moment, right? So memories, if we can kind of be poetic about it, are like a sort of intelligent. If memories were alive, in any moment where the attention is on them, they try to exist. They try to animate, right? That means ideas. You know what it is? It's honestly like a camera, and wherever the camera goes, all those things that come into the camera view know how important it is. So then what is seen as divine will is like the wind moving the sail, I want to also read some quotes from Francis of Assisi. He was the saintly figure in the Christian tradition. Start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. Francis of Assisi says, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Francis of Assisi says a single sunbeam is enough to drive away many shadows. Francis of Assisi says, while you're proclaiming peace with your lips, be careful to have it even more fully in your heart. Francis of Assisi means if God can work through me, he can work through anyone. Francis of Assisi says men lose all the material things they leave behind them in this world, but they carry with them the reward of their charity and the alms they give. For these they will receive from the Lord the reward and recompense they deserve. And what it means is if you live for the collective, whatever karma you have in whatever judgmental simulated context you impose, in some sense you did something for the betterment of the collective. So whatever the individual's result, the collective kind of, you know what it is? It's like the victory of the kingdom is more important than the victory of the individual. An advanced civilization would be where the victory and the defeat of the individuals will also be translated into just victory for the advanced civilization. So there will come a time where the concept of mistakes won't exist anymore. There will be no such thing as mistakes, you know, I would say past the year 2100. Francis of Assisi says, it is no use walking anywhere to preach unless our walking is our preaching. Yeah. You know, historians must stay true to the vision of the world beyond their preference. So a lot of the domain of knowledge is an emotionless state, you know. Sometimes, you know, universities wonder why there isn't a lot of women in engineering classes. You know, why the STEM fields are not like, you know, being filled with women. And then I realized because the analytical is emotionless, because really concentration to geometry needs no interference from an emotion. When I talk about what I perceive in my inner realms, you know, it is in some sense, I don't really have any emotion on it. It's as if it's like when you see a movie in a theater, you know that theater screen is hollow. You know that the movie was made at some other point in time, and so when the person looks at the day and wonders about its meaning, there is the contextual simulation of the past. There is the unknown, the 50% unknown possibility of the present. Then there's the 100% unknown of the future. So what it is like we behind our eyes, the past has kind of taken over that domain, and in front of our eyes, it's just the unknown future. Let's reclaim conscious territory in our mind and begin to realize that we are really an unknown force moving in a known way in an incredibly unknown place. Like, this is the story of the human animal, ladies and gentlemen, and all education is trying to solve this problem, and you can totally know how advanced the educational system is in regards to how it's even considering this idea, in the sense that it's not. Right? For me, you know what it was? Imagine a time traveler from the future came to Earth and gave a global announcement, imagine, and this time traveler, if this is a hypothetical fantasy sci-fi scenario I'm just creating, you know, I'm a novelist on the side, or you know, dabbling with that, but I'll tell you this, like, imagine a time traveler from 200 years in the future comes to us and says, hey guys, in 200 years there's going to be a mental alien invasion. So your species, everybody on the planet has to prepare, and all human beings are like, yo, is that really a time traveler? That's epic. People are trying to get the autograph of this time traveler. And so, how would our species try to create some sort of defense system against a telepathic or mental invasion, right? And I realized not only self-awareness is a huge part of the algorithm, but it is to also utilize the self-awareness, because energy has to move to be stayed honest to itself, but the mind, beyond language, it becomes what energy is trying to reach, right? So we have this identification, we are energy, and then the energy, its effect is like the personality of the person, right? But at the same time, as there is an I thought, there is also just selfless being. You know what it is? It's like two circles, and the verb and the noun are each their own universe, and they're intersecting like the Olympic circles, And in that middle intersection zone of the two dimensions, there's like the story of life simulated. Our strategy towards any sort of mental invasion is to first have everybody on the planet, at whatever age on the planet, to begin trying to solve this universal puzzle. First, we need to, they call it epistemology, but it's like theory. Everybody on the planet should be learning from their vision and trying to theorize what's going on, and trying to bring it to in some sense, the global tribe. We are moving to an era where it's as if the simplest approach is to just accept yourself as a universal being, and realizing that the human is a part of the universe, and the mysteries of intelligence can go in many ways. All the educational systems, upon the declaration from that hypothetical time traveler thought experiment, it's like everybody would have to in some sense become conscious of their inner space. That means a certain part of the day has to go in just being silent and still, and learning from how you're being in your moment, or how your moment is being becomes your teacher. And there's certain moments where as you animate and function, you begin to see a grand orchestra, how the inner realms and the outer realms are being played at the same time. It's seldom this is said, but there are two portals on our face, and these portals take sensory light and translate it as the story of who we are. There is such a mystery here. We are at the pioneer phase. We are at the post discovery of what the human being is phase of humanity. Everybody has to, in some sense, contribute. Because we know that after our body survives, we want the mind to survive. After our mind survives, we want the collective vision to survive. After the collective vision has survived, the universe is ultimate survival. That means the moment identity leaves the vision, God is everywhere, really. As an intelligent universe, if the metaphors were simultaneous. The same. Francis of Assisi says, Lord, grant that I might not so much seek to be love as to love. Francis of Assisi says, if you have men who will exclude any of God's creatures from the shelter of compassion and pity, you will have man who will deal likewise with the fellow men. Francis of Assisi says, above all the grace and the gifts that Christ gives to his beloved is that of overcoming self. Francis of Assisi says, praised be you, my Lord, though our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, producing varied fruits with colored flowers and herbs. Francis of Assisi says it is not fitting when one is in God's service to have a gloomy face or a chilling look. You know, a very cool sentence I remember Terence McKenna was saying. He said nobody knows enough to worry. So the mind can use this sort of view as a backup system of any sort of pressure, you know, pressure, kind of intensity. Francis of Assisi says we must not be wise and prudent according to the flesh. Rather, we must be simple, humble, and pure. Yeah, it's like the state of least energy but greatest efficiency. Francis of Assisi says, grant me the treasure of sublime poverty. Permit the distinctive sign of our order to be that it does not possess anything of its own beneath the sun, for the glory of your name, and that it hath no other patrimony than begging. Okay, that's a bit intense, but I feel what Francis of Assisi is saying. For example, I'll share something with the audience personal about myself. So I was born in Iran, and but then I was raised in Canada, and kind of battled back and forth between the countries kind of relationship. And I remember in Iran, I realized that in all the schools in the educational system, before every exam, because it's a theocratical society, that means religion is literally the political law. So it was as if children had to write in the name of God at the front of every piece of paper on the exam. They would write their name, and then they would write in the name of God. Right? And if a student didn't have that written, it would be as if the teacher's like, son, why did you forget it? But the whole idea was in the name, it would be in the name of the one and only truth. I mean, that's pretty much the religious angle, right? So it was as if it was an acknowledgement of the divine reality before physical reality. That's something cool that I think many religious countries don't realize, that they are engaging a fixed multidimensional perspective on reality, but to have a sort of democratic multidimensionalism, right? This era will come where human beings, rather, what it is? It's like all the nations on the planet. Imagine each nation, if it had a personality, would be a student in a classroom, and all these students are on this classroom, which is a sphere and which is Earth, right? And each student has kind of claimed its own desk as its own territory, right, in the classroom. Now the thing is, these students, some of them are friends, some of them are not, some of them are fighting with each other, some of them are ganging up on the others, and all of this, right? But imagine all these students in the classroom suddenly realize that there's a teacher in the classroom, and what the teacher is that nature and the world is giving us our biggest challenge, which is extinction. That means after all the levels of personal survival, you go towards the impersonal survival. And it's as if, imagine suddenly, this is very sci-fi, but I like the image of it, arose to me right now. I'm imagine in a sci-fi universe, in a parallel dimension of this Earth, right, a very advanced, God archetype of a being animates on Earth and says, I will give, 5 hours, before the universe is in some sense destroyed completely. Everything is eradicated. At that point of a challenge, imagining that hypothetical situation, all the heroes of the realm, all the advanced types of intelligence will instantly retaliate towards collective non-existence. That means the world is here. right? And that is a mysterious power where we all are alive in, right? And those who connect to that power archetypally, this kind of even answers, like, finishes what I was saying about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. It's like it's a relationship with actually a divine universality of the whole moment being what is. Francis of Assisi says, "Pure, holy simplicity confounds all the wisdom of this world and the wisdom of the flesh." And Francis of Assisi says, "I am the herald of the great king." Francis of Assisi says, "The Father willed that his blessed and glorious Son, whom he gave to us and whom was born for us, should, through his own blood, offer himself as a sacrificial victim on the altar of the cross. This was to be done not for himself, through whom all things were made, but for our sins," right? And what it is it's really just like, I would say that I would say what he's saying here is that in some sense the Christian tradition is a very rare story and universal view where human nature at the brink of its destruction became all truth. You see, that's the whole prophetic archetype we find in especially Abrahamic traditions, where the prophet was a human being that had reached some sort of intense level of existential suffering. It was as if something intense was happening in the moment, and something wills the vision to go forth the moment that you have access. It's as if you're a concept. The moment you see a new context, the concept instantly can shift. So anyways, guys, I hope this episode was interesting and helpful, and as we pull the strings of meaning, our relationship with the inner realms and outer realms matures. And when I say you are a pilot of consciousness, the listeners of this talk will truly understand what I mean when I say we pilot as attention the moment's meaning. The pilots of consciousness, they are in some sense, you can say, the precondition to truth's ignorance. They are free. They are the freedom of the moment beyond image or any sort of photo or film. Language is really a film, But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Much blessings and namaste.